Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. Massive Rostermania updates to bring you today, especially with regard to Sentinels and Cloud9. Both of these two teams potentially taking a big step closer to determining their in-game leader for the new season, especially Sentinels, but also Cloud9 now linked to ShahZaM, who could join Cloud9 potentially after a trial period they are supposedly having, and if he doesn't, could well stay on G2 if they acquire the guard. Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. We also hit 50,000 subs just the other day, so massive thanks to all of those who have subbed recently. Let's keep on pushing, baby. The growth has been immense lately, and let's just crack right on because lots is happening lately. Demon1 officially 21 as of yesterday. Happy birthday to him. But let's talk Rostermania because Gen.G, they have gone through and pretty much wiped their roster almost entirely. Surprising to me a little bit that King is gone. Now, it's always possible that teams release players with the intention that if they don't get signed somewhere else, to then just re-sign those players back again. So it's not always 100% guaranteed that just because they've been released in their contracts, they won't be on Gen.G again next year. King I thought was pretty good, but they decided to part ways with him. TS, Eco, everyone, including even their coach and Elmer Putty, he's gone as well. So as we see right here, with the exception of Meteor, they are all gone. So I'm not exactly sure what Gen.G are cooking here, but I guess we'll have to stay tuned for that. There's also pretty much here confirmation from SK Rossi that he will be gone from Global Esports. He says it's Jova, right? It's GE over, Global Esports over. So yeah, unfortunate for SK Rossi, and the current rumour is that GE are effectively going to be signing an international team next season. They're going to be, you know, moving away from the Indian scene and trying to sign Indian players and just say, you know what, we're going to go, you know, as international within their own region as they realistically can. So, yeah, quite possible that Global Esports won't really be the, you know, the team for the Indian players as it has been the most recent season, which is a shame, I think. But, you know, that's how a lot of these organizations might well see their future. So SK Rossi similarly out of Global Esports as it stands. Now, we're going to discuss Cloud9 in a second. Before we get to that, a bit of drama actually, because in the spreadsheets we'll look at here in a second, Ye has not been spotted anywhere right now, which is surprising because you would think Ye would be, given his pedigree, certainly a consideration for the majority of teams, at least a consideration, especially if he said, as he did say a couple of months ago on stream, that he is willing to play for the minimum. Now, MCE, the head coach of Cloud9, actually discussed Ye a little bit and said that you guys know when they dropped Ye and Vanity, they said, oh, there were role issues with those players. And nobody really bought that excuse because the belief was that they'd run out of money. And the thing is, that what makes it difficult to believe this is true again, now, I think I do believe this is true in part, but I think that probably both elements are true, is that now the rumour is that Cloud9 are effectively going to pay the minimums. So it's like, at the time they were saying no financial problems, it's all because of the role issues, but a few months later we now see, and the big word on the street is, that Cloud9 are basically just paying minimum salaries, and that's why all of their players are gone with the exception of Jake, who will actually take the minimum salary. So it's like, there clearly are some financial repercussions they're thinking about. Does that necessarily mean that there were no role issues? Not necessarily, actually, as MCE says, that Ye was his own player and would put his own spin on setups that the coaching staff created for him. He's a very particular player in the way that he wants to play, and it can be frustrating to deal with sometimes. So the whole role issues not existing is just not true. And talking about how some of their issues, you know, even when they dropped Zeta, right, and of course Vanity and Ye were gone as well, they brought some new players in, they changed things around, but interesting analysis of Ye's play style, saying that he's a very particular player and it can be frustrating to deal with sometimes. So, you know, it's interesting timing in a way because you'll tend to see that when players are not yet signed to a new team, their former teammates or their former coaching staff or whatever don't tend to say anything negative towards them because, you know, they want their former teammate to get a spot elsewhere and then they can criticize them after that. But in this way, not the case at all. And yeah, Ye has not really been linked anywhere as of yet, which is definitely surprising to me. Now, we also saw this yesterday. So Trick came up with like a bait tweet that said, oh, Screwface is going to replace Demon1 and Demon1's going to NRG. Now, I don't think that Demon1 and EG are going to part ways or split up, but who knows what's happening with Screwface, because Flynn says bait unless, does he know? Kind of implying that something might be happening, and to be fair, for a little bit of time now, we have seen EG fall into the confusing category of Bodork's list of what they're doing. So I don't know if they're trying to cook anything up here, EG. I, find it hard to believe. But, so this is clearly like a bit of a bait tweet for impressions or something. But, NRG, Sadak, Demon 1, Marv, Victor, Crashies, and Flynn's like, bait and less. So maybe there's some part of this that might have some validity, even if it's just, NRG Marved, which we think it probably is going to be the case at the moment. Now, before we get to the Americas, this is what's going on with KOI. They have trials practically the entire EMEA region right now. These are all the players that KOI have supposedly held trials with, in the same way apparently to what Cloud9 are currently doing. Supposedly Cloud9 are trialing like everyone as well at the same time, and I guess we'll get into it now. So this is the new spreadsheet that Flynn comes up with as of yesterday. Just looking at the Pacific first, this is made before Gen.G dropped their team, so that's kind of why we see here these were in the green, but now of course that is no longer the case. I don't know what Detonation Gaming are cooking, to be perfectly honest. There's some questionable roster decisions happening here, and as we saw with Global Esports, SK Rossi's going to be gone. I don't know if they're going to have really any Indian players on that roster for next season. Time, I suppose, on that one will only tell. Big changes at Zeta and elsewhere, but this is what's happening. For now, we don't yet know who, well, for Paper X it might be. I think this guy Egoist, who's now being linked to Bleed, he was briefly linked to Paper X as well. So they, I'm sure, have an idea what they're going to do. And Xcurate actually has now become even more likely to join T1. Of course, brother of Forsaken, CSGO player from that region. So that's pretty interesting. When you guys see some name in green or some name in orange, that means that in the case of green, the chances have increased. And in the case of the orange or even red, the chances have decreased. So that's kind of the new key, I suppose, that Flynn is using with these spreadsheets. Now, this is another one here from EMEA, and the main thing that I'm really looking at is just the absolute insanity of KOI when they have their few players they might keep around, but then they've got Save, Navera, Ender, like we talked about all these players a second ago, but all of those guys have supposedly been trialed with KOI, so I don't know what they're trying to do. Also with Liquid, just to say, that Safe is apparently quite likely to still be there on Liquid going forwards, and probably not to KOI, Jampy and Nats. So that would mean Redgar, of course, to be gone, and potentially Soulcast as well. Don't know where Soulcast would go. Not sure he's on here as it stands. But Redgar has been linked potentially to the new Carmine Corp team, and then we actually have Navera, who is, seemingly more likely than before, potentially going to Vitality. So that's pretty interesting. Link after the trials, maybe as the IGL for KOI. So that's what's happening in EMEA. But this is what's happening in the Americas, and a few very interesting updates to hone in on here. The first one I'll say before we talk Cloud9 is Sentinels. As you can see, the chances, according to Flynn over the last day, of their IGL being John QT as opposed to being Valin has now increased in John QT's favour. So it seems like Sentinels might have honed in on their roster, and if this is what they do, I'm actually very satisfied, I think, with these changes, to be fair, from Sentinels. It allows Pancada to actually be back on the smokes that he wants to play. They can retain that existing chemistry with the team that did, showed some glimpses of hope at the end of last season. John QT comes in as a proper IGL for the roster, with Marved going probably to NRG, you would think is the case if he does get removed. And they have the benefits of potentially playing really well in practice during the World Championship itself just a couple of weeks ago with potentially John QT. So of the options, John QT from M80 is now significantly the most likely, and from a few perspectives that actually makes quite a lot of sense. Now, if that's Sentinels done and dusted for their roster changes for now, that is pretty surprising that Sentinels have decided this early, but one team that won't have decided yet is Cloud9. They have trials, as we expect, loads of different players. But ShahZaM has now been linked to this roster in the same way that he's been linked also with G2. ShahZaM wants to play. I think that's quite clear. He doesn't just want to be a streamer. He has the competitive drive still within him, and he's still technically on G2 as it stands. And the rumor is that if G2 do acquire the guys on the guards, the guards, they probably won't be acquiring all 5 of them and will likely want to put ShahZaM in there instead of probably Valin. So that's a very interesting possibility. But if that doesn't happen, or even if it does, ShahZaM is also potentially looking at Cloud9. That's the rumor right now, that along with Jake and MCE that are definitely going to be there, ShahZaM has been trialed as the new IGL for Cloud9, which would be kind of an exciting phenomenon. So the return of Cloud9 ShahZaM could be on the cards. Of course, it's only a trial, as Flynn says, for the time being. And, you know, we actually saw from Jake here, welcome ShahZaM to Cloud9 Esports. You know, what is this? It says ShahZaM in the reply. So, you know, ShahZaM's trying to downplay it, and maybe there is no trial, and maybe this is coming from nowhere. You don't really know. When Flynn is trying to keep up with literally every single roster across all 4 regions and like 40 plus teams, it's not easy to do. There are going to be some errors. There are going to be some mistakes. That's only natural. He's doing his best for the community, and we commend him for doing so. But, you know, you can't guarantee that Cloud9 ShahZaM's happening, but I think that it's a very interesting update to at least look at. And we then got, you know, this kind of funny tweet from Cloud9, their take, let's say, on that classic Zekken tweet from last year sometime. I'm guessing it was at this point. So, yeah, there are some players that Cloud9 have trials. ManBearPig, potentially one of them, Nismo, potentially another one, and ShahZaM now maybe as well. And actually, James of F gave his thoughts on this and said that as far as he's concerned, Cloud9 have had 20 plus trials. The only one he knows for sure is Screwface, Nismo, Oxy, and Narrate. So it would be interesting if ShahZaM and Oxy, as a duo, for example, were to come over from G2 to the new Cloud9 team. That might make a fair bit of sense as well. But yeah, very much enjoyed your perspective on all this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.